Disclaimer: the information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of Gans processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Okay, Alex, if you're ready to share, I'll let you know when we see your screen. There we go. It's coming up. Yes, it is. We see your screen, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. This is our KFTV plate here. And as you can see, it's getting more and more full all the time. And I believe there's, 34 more to go, Mark? But
oh, I just noticed the Spanish one, Hispano. Very nice.
Yes, and but we need quite a few more, and there's still some significant countries missing. And we're working on it because there's a connection that needs to be made, and this is where the science meets the soul of the man for peace. And as I said, we've been talking about the word connection today a lot. And so welcome, everybody. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute. This is continued teachings in the plasma science. We're now into the advanced understanding. Not too far down the road, but a little bit more advanced. And today's subject is going to be the Gans of connection. My name is Alexander. I'm from Canada. It is August the 22nd, 2021. This is part of the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. So I want to welcome everybody and to this is for new students. This is for mature students. And really, more importantly, this is for new teachers. Well, actually, it's also for the regular teachers, but we need a lot more teachers because we've been going through since last October on this particular series through some basic teaching, and we've been picking up terminology and then having an opportunity to use it in different contexts. We went into intermediate teaching and advanced teaching. And again, this was stressing a lot of people because they just wanted the cups of life, and all they wanted to do was get rid of the virus. And after 20 months, it's still the most important thing that's on the plate of everybody's. And then we decided to go through a little bit more advanced basic understanding. And so you see in the schedule here, then we moved into, of course, intermediate understanding, and that was very successful, but the challenges continue, and now we're into some real challenges here, and it's stressing all of us because we are now going through this transition. And as part of the advanced understanding, we completed the stacker units, and you can see where we still have to go. We had an understanding of kind of what's been holding us behind, And as we're all stuck in our yellow submarine, somehow we will have to be elevated. And that elevation involves some kind of connection. And so I call it the Gans of connection. And that's pretty well my own interpretation. And so what I'd like to do is to outline how I arrived at that. So in review, we looked at the terminology and we found that energy is always in motion. And so the rules governing that involve magnetic and gravitational field forces. And we understand that these are all natural plasma. So as we go through the various geometries and the various dimensions, we find that we have dimensions within our geometries and we have geometries within our dimensions. All of this is dependent on susceptibility. And what causes this susceptibility? And what are these forces that are coming in? And do we understand what we mean by dynamism? And so our knowledge is being challenged because most of us really don't have access to classified information or a lab. Our lab is basically our kitchen or our workshop. And what we've been trying to do is to get back to normal. And that's been pretty hard to do when we really don't understand what normal is. We've been going through life without understanding where matter is coming from. What is the creation of matter? And is there a universal order? And so we find in book number 1 that there is a universal order of creation of matters. And this involves the plasma matter and the plasma science. And so we've been trying to teach and add to the knowledge in a gradual manner, because for the few hours that we get together in our classes, that has to kind of offset the continuous inundation of misinformation and propaganda that we have through our day-to-day activities. And somehow, if we had to depend on what we see on a day-to-day basis, we would have never got here. But thanks to the structure of light, there's a connection. And that's what we're talking about today, is a connection between the here and the there. Well, where is the here and where is the there? And how far there is it? And does it matter? Well, if we look at a larger scheme, the origin of the universe, and you say, well, what's that got to do with my tiny little perfect world? Well, the thing is, what we're looking at here is how one begets another, or in this case, how one begets into two. So in other words, we have a multiplier effect. And so one of the concerns that people in the shall we say, the health industry are trying to figure out is how do cells multiply. And then we find, well, they multiply through division. And so there has to be some kind of connection that causes that to happen. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the creation of the universe and how the universe is created. So it exists from energy. But the thing about energy is always in motion. So when you look at the picture on the left and you look at the creation of this plasma field, how can you grab onto it when it's constantly in motion? And when it's in motion, it has a charge. So that gives it a direction. And then you find in the picture on the right, well, you have two plasma fields and there's a connection. And we've been referring to that connection as the infinity loop. In the process of bringing these two fields together with this infinity loop, it was the beginning of principal matter. So we find that energy was traveling through the universe, which we call PM ticks. They come together, they create a force field interaction. And when they have that balance, it creates a maggraph. So this is the essence of creation. But the thing is, we have different points of view. And what is your point of view? We constantly ask that. So based on our education, we could say that our point of view is an earthbound point of view. We could say that our point of view is a matter point of view. but our point of view literally is from our point of view, and we are plasma beings. So we have to kind of flip things around. And so that's what we have to change. Well, how do we flip things around? And we've talked about poles flipping, positive and negatives, and then of course the basic fundamentals of magnetic forces, which are attraction and repulsion. And then attraction and repulsion from what? And attraction and repulsion to what? And so in order to have this point of reference, the point is that you have to have a maggrav field. So the maggrav field is a combination of the attraction and repulsion forces. And so we find that the forces are magnetical or gravitational. Well, what does that mean? That means that's a residue from the maggrav condition. And if this residue is more of an attraction repulsion type of thing, then that has to add more magnetical energy. But if it's a repulsion attraction type of maggrav, then it has to add the gravitational field, right? Because it has to attract. So we have a pushing and a pulling between the magnetical gravitational fields. The point is that we have a residue from the maggrav condition, which causes attraction and repulsion. So the attraction is the conversion of energy, and the repulsion is the divergence of energy. And so when we look at the cups of life, this is exactly what is going on. We have two cups of life, and understand they're not called the cups of pandemic. So, you know, if after 21 months, we're still talking about this, but, you know, when we built the cups of life, we didn't do it for the pandemic. We did it because they were the cups of life. When we talk about things in terms of our knowledge, it's related to space, and it has been worked on for many, many years. So this isn't just coming about within the last 21 months, but it's very handy right now and very important because we're still discussing it. And this is the most important thing. So really, until we deal with this, there's no point discussing anything else, because this is a matter of life and death. And to understand that when we look at the one cup and we have a zinc plate and a copper coil and a nano-coated copper coil, there is a connection. And inside that connection, and I've never shown the wires in these pictures because we wanted to represent the fields. And so the connection to what? Well, there's a magnetical field, and then that creates a balance with a gravitational field. So when we look inside the cups, what we have to look at is the interaction of these plasma fields. What causes this interaction? Well, there has to be a connection. And where does this connection come from? And it's a good thing that you and I are not responsible for that knowingly, because when we build these cups of life, the connection manifests into Gans. So this Gans is the Gans of connection. And that Gans of connection is a susceptibility based on the pattern that we've created. So there is a transition between the matter state and the plasma state, and there's a transition between the plasma state and the matter state. Maybe. And so when we look at the cups of life, we created the Gans. Now, when we have the Gans, we've created a different energy level. So now we have two fields with a connection. And with that, we created another Gans. So now we have three fields with a connection. And from that, we created amino acid. And we know when we create amino acid, we also create water. And then there's another element that is tying us in to this planet, and that is calcium. So we actually maybe have another Gans in there. So when you look at all the things that we've jammed in this cup, it's a wonder that the glass around the cup doesn't break. But when we look at the second cup, all these things are happening in the second cup, but we only changed the zinc plate for a copper plate. And we did the same thing. We have a magnetical field and a gravitational field. And the reason I'm repeating all this is because many new knowledge seekers need to know, and it needs to be explained in a clear and concise manner. Because I don't know what it's like in your community. People in my community are able to contribute almost 35 seconds to learning about this science. So, and the reason for that is because we are involved with an emotional and physical connection. And so there's an interaction, and then there's a relationship between the two. But we'd like to keep these apart if we're dealing with a pandemic. So the scientific documentation shows that we can build up the field in these cups and elevate the energies to the point, we talked about jamming all these things in the cup. Well, if we didn't expand, the cups would break. But the plasma does not see the matter state. It goes right through. And so it extends beyond the glass. It expands beyond the glass. So we'll talk about that more later. But try and keep the cups apart, 1 meter apart. If you're dealing with this guy here, if you're still dealing with him, understand that we have the scientific documentation that shows 99.86% success. And so we're wondering, why is it taking so long to deplete these energies or convert these energies? And but what I do know is we make the connection. We understand that the emotional and physical aspect are, wow. Mark, are you able to hear me?
It just went in and out a couple of times. I thought maybe you muted, but I didn't see it mute, but we lost your voice. I was seeing the speaker move, the microphone. It's good now.
It's good now? Okay. For some reason, there's a slowness on the internet. So just keep an eye and please bear with me. And anyway, I shall carry on. Are we okay? Yes?
Yes, we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So when we have this balance between our emotional and physical energies, it creates a MAGRAV condition, and that is part of our essence. And when we say MAGRAV condition, that means we have to have both the magnetical and the gravitational relationship. And then there's a third component, and that is the soul. The soul comes in and affects the emotional and physical cup, but then within each cup, we have a magnetical gravitational relationship and the soul. And then the combination of the 3 cups have a magnetical gravitational relationship and the soul. And what we've been talking about is how that relates to our point of view as plasma beings. But as our point of view, we are in contact and connected to an earthbound point of view. So we brought in the inertia cup, which we changed it to nano-coated copper coils, 2 of them, and a nano-coated copper plate. And the same thing happened. We had a magnetical field and a gravitational field. We just changed some of the components. You change some of the components, you change the conditions. You change the conditions, that's all part of the environment. And that's what the cups of inertia are doing. They're enacting with the environment. Our environment happens to be Earth. So on Earth, the connector is the iron. And so we just substituted now the copper coils for a zinc coil and an iron coil. And this is the cup of the Earth. And it too has a magnetic field and a gravitational field. So now we look at the connection between the top 3 cups and the bottom 2 cups, and this is part of the 5-cup system and set up in a vertical stacker unit. And the combination of which, so it's the interaction of the cup of soul, the cup of the emotion, and the cup of physicality, which represents us. And then that is in conjunction connected to the cup of inertia and the cup of the earth. So now we have a connection that when we start with to create the principal matter, it's the energy that is flowing throughout the universe, which we call the PM ticks. And they go everywhere. They travel in energy packs and they go everywhere on their own and in different field strengths and different flavors. And they come together when they have a connection. And so in that connection, we convert all of these energies into a plasma field, which constitutes antimatter, dark matter, and matter. And what we call the principal matter, the transition matter, and the convergence matter. And that creates a gravitational condition, which we call a maggraph. And that maggraph, our maggraph, interacts with the Earth's maggraph, and that is a field now interaction, and that is the essence of inertia. So when we looked at all the different fields, and depending on our point of view, because the Earth's surface is curved, and actually the whole universe is curved, we find that energies can converge and diverge, and it all depends on our point of view. But within the ranges, we find that when we go from a higher state to a lower state, we lose energy. So there's a binding, and that's the byproduct of the reduction in energy. And there's something that allows us to go from state to state. So there's a connecting force there, and that is the connecting force between the plasmatic fields and the physical fields. And so we found that the connections are in part of the antimatter, dark matter, and matter. And these are all plasmatics, and they can manifest into physicality. Not necessarily so, but they can. And that's one of the beauties on this planet. And when does it do that? Well, it all depends on susceptibility. And once the susceptibility is right, then there's a conversion. So we have our soul, we have our physicality, and we have the connection, our emotional connection in between. But there is a duality. And this is another point that we're missing, because energy flows both ways. So when we have a duality, that means there's a transformation of energy from our soul to our emotion. And then once we get into our emotional state, then we have a physical transportation of our body, and we can go wherever we want within the range on this planet. And so this was all part of the skills to learn. But are we only restricted to this planet? Because when we look at these rules, we find that our planet is actually traveling through outer space. So although our range of motion is on this planet, indirectly, our range of motion is through this space. It's just that we're using the Earth as the vehicle for transport. So the Earth is our transport vehicle through space, and our body is our transport vehicle through around the Earth. So there's another question then. Can we connect directly to the space? And so why not? Because when we look at how we are created, where does all this come from? What is the connection? So we talked about star formations, and one of the most important star formations was the hemoglobin, which we talked about recently, and that is because that anchors us to the Earth. But that is the anchorage that brings us, and we know that iron is a metal, but that brings us to this earth where we begin the creation of amino acids, which are the building blocks of life. And these amino acids, which are carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen, none of them are metals. So we understand metals as something that attracts. So our whole understanding of attraction has to change. So we understand attraction as being magnetical, but now we understand that when we get into the nanotechnology, that all the elements can be magnetical. In fact, the magnetical gravitational relationship is the essence of natural plasma. So how do these elements come together? And each of these elements, when they come together, there's a connection. So we looked at the principles of connection, but really, where does that connection originally come from? So we can see that everything has a point of view. And why this is important is because the energy is flowing around. So when you look at your point of view, you see energy coming and you see energy going. Now, you discern what you see. You interpret what you see. And you restrict yourself to what you can see. Do we need to restrict ourselves just to that? And unfortunately, we don't. So this is because energy is always in motion. And when you look at a vacuum in outer space and you say, well, there's nothing there. Well, no, I'm sorry, nothing is nothing. There's lots there and it's full. But how big is the field? Well, that depends. So that depends on the connection. So when we look at energy in motion, we say it has a charge, a positive and negative. But what's going on in between? Like what is connecting the positive to the negative? So, you know, we could say there's an infinity loop, but seriously, what is connecting that together? Because we're not discussing, and that's the point. When we start building a dimension, we have to start with a point to begin, and then we add a second point and we make a connection. So interestingly enough, we can grab one end of this and swing this around and kind of pivot things around. And if we continue doing this on a regular basis, we will eventually end up with a galaxy. And I was like, holy cow, you know, we just started with a single point and now boom, we're talking about galaxies. And, you know, this is way more than I bargained for. I just want to, you know, get my tiny little perfect world organized. Okay, well, the way we organize our world is when two forces come together. So we've seen how the PM ticks come together. They create a rotating field from a little dance. When they come together, they want to dance, and that dance creates a rotating field, and then it builds up a structure where you have the X and Y axis. So we've gone from the galaxy to the point of origin. And then we look at, oh, well, when we look at book number 3, The Origin of the Universe, where we see that 1 multiplies by 2 by dividing itself. And then we look at our tiny little perfect world, a little red dot in the bottom right-hand corner, which is under quarantine. And the interesting thing is, our tiny little world is incredibly tiny. Now, as we walk on this planet, it seems like a big world, but it's incredibly tiny when we compare it to the rest of the universe. And this is the point. Our tiny world is connected to the rest of the universe. But what I want you to notice is the difference, the difference in size, even on this picture, which is not to scale. But the universe is vast and expansive, and our tiny little perfect world is not perfect, but it sure is tiny. In fact, it's even micro. But the thing is, there's a difference. So what is keeping our Earth so tiny? So there's a strong energy there that is keeping it tiny. And that strong energy is related directly to how vast the rest of the universe is. In other words, what I'm saying, there is a connection between the tininess of the man's universe and the vastness of the universe. This is the fundamental principle of the Trinity. So let me read this. We all know that when the PM ticks come together, they create a little dance. It's a rotating field. How strong is that rotating field? Well, that's dependent on the speed of rotation. So the speed of rotation of the plasma, and in physical science, we refer to this as an electron. The speed of the rotation of the plasma, the electron, is dictated by the amount of the magnetic fields, which are transferred from the large twin plasma of the proton to the plasma of the smaller twin plasma of the electron. So what we're saying is the size. Are we okay, Mark? Are you hearing me okay?
Yes, someone just opened their mic. I muted it. No problem.
All right, thank you. The size difference is based on how strong the big field is and how weak the small field is. So, in other words, there is an elastic relationship between the two. So when we look at our universe and we see that, well, it isn't exactly round. Well, neither is our planet. We're kind of flattened at the top and the bottom. So, you know, our universe kind of looks like an egg. And in fact, our planet kind of looks like an egg. And so these lines that you see at the center, these are the principal universal lines, magnetic fields. And the energy comes from the inside and goes out. When it comes to the outside, it has to turn around and come back in. So from the center, which is the gravitational component, the energy has to go out to the boundary. That's the magnetical. So we said with respect to Earth, that would be the difference between the ground and the sky. When you look at the energy in motion, it would be from our core to the outer boundaries of our universe or our solar system or whatever we want to make a relationship to. So in order to understand how that energy flows, because this is a two-dimensional diagram of a three-dimensional concept, let's take that point that we grab and we swing it around from left to right, and that becomes what we call a point sweep. Okay, and then we see the gradients in between that point sweep, which are these gravitational fields, and they are of different strengths. They are of different sizes. When I say sizes, in terms of radius. In this picture, because it's only half a picture, it's in terms of radius. But the point is that there's a rotating field and there's a difference in strength. So we see the same kind of construction with what they call UFOs. They're only half a flying machine based on a star formation. But what I'd like you to notice is that they're pointy at the ends. One moment, please. So pointy at the ends as opposed to being pointy in the middle, the more curved in the middle, flatter surface. And so from our point of view, whether you're on the left or the right, the only person who knows that, that's you, because it doesn't really matter. What happens is the energy that goes around is representative of a rotating field. And so before I get into this connection, I would like to jump to another connection. And that is, I think you're all familiar with the capillary effect. You know, when you spill some liquid on the floor and you want to pick that up, you grab a towel and you kind of dip it in the liquid, and you can see the capillary effect, how the towel sucks up the moisture. Well, we find the same thing with siphoning, where you create a siphon hose between two bodies of water. So let your imagination go here. These are two big tubs, and this is a siphon hose. And we've sucked the water through the siphon hose. And we had to do that because initially there was only air in the hose. So we wanted to move the water from one side to the other. So we sucked water into the hose. And we had to expend energy to do that. But interestingly enough, once we filled the siphon hose, we created a water bridge. And so what happens is that the water can flow between the two tanks, and I don't have to siphon anymore. And there's an interesting thing that happens is that as the water level goes down at the point where the siphon is broken or the water bridge is broken, then the action stops. So something starts the action. So in this case, if I was siphoning the water and I had to suck the air out of the hose, that was the start of it. And when we ended it, and that was because the water level went down, now instead of sucking water into the hose, air was being sucked in, and so the siphon stopped. So there we go. That's how we stopped that bridge. But what is the connection? And so when we looked at our daisy and we understand how the daisy is creating protein, but when we create protein, we create water. And what's interesting about the daisy is that we have in this picture two components. We have a core component made of this gold colored formation and an outer form of white petals. And so somehow, some way, there's a connection, first of all, to create the core, second of all, to create the white petals, and third of all, the difference between the core and the petals. And then, you know, there's also something that is stopping it at the end, right? Because we have to start it, connect it, and stop it. And so how does that work? And so, which brings me to the subject of daisy chains. And the reason for this daisy chain is because it creates a cascading effect. And we hope to be able to talk about that more in the future. But this cascading effect means that if we take these two containers of water and we put them all in series, and let's say we start with 2 containers. So in this picture, I put 6 containers. And I put a siphon hose in between them all. So if I have a source which is bringing the energy in to fill up the cup on the left-hand side, then all the other cups in the daisy chain can remain at the same energy level. So in other words, we do not need to set up these cups at different heights. When we set them up at different heights, then they have different gradients. But if we set them up at the same height, then they all have the same gradient. So how do we get this to flow? So what we have to do is we have to have some kind of energy coming in other words, maybe pumping water in, and we can daisy chain all of these cups together, and then the energy would go out. The daisy chain is the connection. And as long as there's energy coming in, and as long as there's energy going out, that connection will maintain. So when we're looking at this connection is a maggrav, because the coming of in and the going of out is the magnetical gravitational relationship. So we have something on the periodic table that we call transition metals. And we are using them as connection metals. That's what transition means. It's a connection metal. And so that's what we're talking about today, the Gans of connection. And these transition metals are basically inside this box. And what I want to draw your attention to is the three that we've been talking about most commonly: copper, zinc, and iron are inside this box. And we find that the amino acid construction materials, being carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen, are not inside this box. So somehow, when we create a cup of life and we put in these metals, we put a copper coil and a zinc plate and a nano-coated copper coil, and we create Gans. So these transmission metals are transitioning energy from one level to another level. And once they create that structure, they draw in the amino acid. And these amino acids are not part of these transition metals, but they're in fact a maggrav condition, very stable. And so this is the point. Somehow, some way, there's been a connection. And we used the wires in our devices, but do we have to use the wires? Are there ways to connect without using the wires? So what I want to draw your attention to is the fact that these metals, and we understand metals, first of all, generally speaking, we say that they're magnetic. Well, some metals are not magnetic. And like copper, for instance, is not magnetic. And then others are shiny and some are dull. So they have different characteristics. So depending on where in this periodic table, and I don't want to get into it in this class, you're welcome to go and do your research, but there is an organization. So these metals have different characteristics, but they also are different between shininess and magnetism. With the plasma science, we find that everything's magnetical. Everything's magnetical. So we have to change the playing field. So one of the things that we're using to change the playing field is these transition metals. Why am I bringing this up? Well, this is the best picture that I could find. If you've ever been driving down a long straight road on a very hot day, and you see the shimmer at the end of the road, where it actually causes a shine. And you know that as you're driving down this road, this particular road is made out of asphalt, and you know that asphalt doesn't shine. But as you get closer to the horizon, you see that shine. So with the transition metals, we call that luster. And that luster has to do and deals with a turn. And the horizon deals with a turn. And for some of us who say follow motor racing, one of the popular features is the hairpin turn. And so sometimes the cars are coming down a long straightaway and they have to go through extreme braking to make the hairpin turn, which are almost down to, relatively speaking, stopped. And then sometimes they just use the momentum of the car to make the turn, and then they hammer down on the accelerator and accelerate out of there. So that's the fundamental of the hairpin turn. And so, you know, what's our point of view? Are we coming or are we going? Well, let's go back to these principal universal lines. So we're saying the center point is the gravitational point, and the outside point is the magnetical point. And on a two-dimensional drawing, we're just going to focus in on the end point. And so we know that there's a rotating field in all three dimensions. Let's just look at the rotating field on a two-dimension. Say we go for the left, follow the charge in motion, follow the negative charge, comes to the right, and now it has to have, and it's going at a phenomenal speed, right? These electrons are going at a phenomenal speed where these energies are going, and they have to slow down to make the turn. And when they make the turn, they have to speed up. So in other words, at the turning point, at the hairpin turn, if you will, they have to slow down and speed up and turn 180 degrees. And so what happens is, as in certain metals, when they flatten out, these turns become sharper and sharper and sharper. So when these turns become very sharp, these metals are become very shiny. And that represents the luster of the metals. So when you find very shiny metals, you find that the north-south distance of the poles is very, very short, but the east-west distance is long and it's very sharp. And so it becomes like a hairpin turn. And that's what you're seeing at the end of the road on a hot day. The shimmering effect is the luster, is the shine. That's a shining from the angle. And so if we have to make this turn, and as this flattening begins, or continues rather, the distance between the incoming and the outgoing narrows. And that's what would constitute a hairpin turn. Well, the energy that's flowing is negatively charged. So the negative energy that's coming into the turn is negatively charged. Well, the energy coming out of the turn is negatively charged. Oh, wait a second. Similar poles repel. So what does that mean? That means that this hairpin turn may have to be adjusted into a little fat turn, okay? Because these negative poles, when they come together and change direction, they actually are going to be repelling. So as they're converging, they're going to have to be repelling. So they come in, then they go out, then they go around, then they come in, and then they go out. And, you know, first of all, how do they change direction? And then how do they do this and maintain this connection of the flow? So one of the ways it can do it is like the siphon effect that we found. Once the energy is coming in and there's a continuity of this energy, then the outflow pulls the inflow and the inflow pushes the outflow. So there's a relationship between the in and the out. Okay, so I understand that swings us around. But because of the repulsion of the two poles, something else happens. And so we know when PM ticks come together at different directions, we already know when two forces come together, they form a little dance, and they create a rotating field. And this dance and rotating field is the connection. So in other words, as the energy comes in order for it to turn around, it has to pick up a connection, and it picks up a field. And that field sends it around. And then when it comes out, it has to come out at a different direction. What direction will it be? That depends on susceptibility. So it's going to come back into the principal universal line as opposed to going away from it. And so that determines the boundary. That determines the end. So the connection is coming in. To maintain that connection, it has to go around and then go out. But it goes out the way it came in, but not in the same path. But the energy goes two ways. So there's another energy that has to come in. So we could be having a collision here. So just a moment. We got to bring some safety into this picture here. So you're all familiar with a safety pin. And one of the things that makes the safety pin so unique is the springiness of the metal. And so we were able to take that metal and wrap it around in a circle on one end and bring it out to the other end where we have the clasp. Okay, so this springiness that you see with the rotating field at one end is the way this energy is moving around at this point of meeting, shall we say, the tip of the hairpin turn. Okay, so when we put these safety pins together, you see how they really come together. And the reason they are staying together is because of the clasp. So there's a hook, there's a connecting that is bringing these springs together. And then when we bind this energy more and more, we find that these energies that are coming from all over the place, the size of the rotating field at the springy point is very tiny. But the combination of all of them coming together is very large. So there's a relationship between the inside spring and the outside. So if we release this hook, in other words, explode the picture, we need to have more room. So if we open all of these up, then you can see how the spring opens. And now we've broken that connection of the loop of the spring, and we have a path in and we have a path out, and we have a connecting path in between, which is a rotating field. Now, if we increase the energy of this field, we find that something has to happen when we bring more forces together. And if these forces are in opposite directions, then something is going to give. And so these forces are not going to collide because there's a magnetical gravitational relationship. So when you have two poles, they repel. When you have opposite poles, they attract. So if these forces are coming together and they are of the same charge, then they will repel. And so you have a change of direction. Now you understand what happens with the water molecule. So if we reviewed the water molecule and we said, we couldn't figure out why the two tiny hydrogens could balance off that one big fat oxygen. So for the purposes of discussion, we could say this water molecule is a magnet. And so we know that the hydrogen is negatively charged. And so that's the direction that it wants to go in. But the whole water molecule is a magnet. Well, when you look at an ocean, you can imagine how many water molecules there are. And the thing about it is that these hydrogens that are on the outer edge are not fixed. They're in constant motion. And when they're in constant motion, that means there's a springiness to them. So in other words, what we're saying is that the energy is coming into the oxygen and going out to the hydrogen. But because it's a two-way street, it comes in from one, goes, comes in from the left and goes out to the right. And it also comes in from the right and goes to the left, right? Because it's a two-way street. But if the energy is coming, say, on one wave, where the two hydrogens pull apart because of the springiness, they will collide with another water molecule. And if those two water molecules are expanding at the same time, they will crash into each other. This crashing together is what causes waves. So this is why you look at a metal and, it'll have a shine because it's flat. But the only time the water is flat is when it doesn't have extra energy that's coming in, which is usually comes from the wind or from currents. But the thing is, when the energies come together and they crash, they can't go into each other because they're both negative charge. So there's a crashing. And so in between these two expansions, you will have motion in another direction. So when two forces come together, if they can create a rotating field, then they create a Magravs condition. But if they come together to collide, then they have to release the energy in another direction. So in other words, there is a relationship between the central point and the outside point. So let's look at another example here. And I know it's a hard picture to see, but what I've done is I've taken this spring. It's like a little slinky toy that you can get at the dollar store. And I wanted to put this bottle in the center. So it kind of looks like a water molecule, doesn't it? And I'm actually using the magnets here as weights, dead weight. There's no magnetic work here. But what I want to show you is that the inside and the outside diameter is almost the same. The difference is the metal that's in between. That is the only difference in the size. Now, these are springy metals. So let's say we release the spring. So we find that these fields come together and they wrap themselves around this bottle. We're looking at this bottle from the top down, so you're seeing the cap of the bottle there. And so the inside core matches the radius of the bottle. And you find that the outside core is larger than what it was before. So in other words, as the center core got smaller, the outside core got larger. Well, let's see if there's any consistency in that. Let's remove the bottle. And so that's exactly what happens. As the center core gets smaller, the outside core gets larger. And we find that this happens through the field rotation. The faster it rotates, the higher the field strength. And how many times have we seen this on the plasma reactor group? Rick has shown a field where he's put it through a high-speed rotation. And the faster the rotation, the center core got smaller and smaller and smaller. And so the energy from the rotation went higher and higher and higher. So we now have a relationship to the strength of the outside field directly related to the strength of the inside field. So this becomes what we call the Gans of connection. Now, how small can it go? Well, obviously, it can't continue. It stops at a certain point. and what is the determining factor. And then you look at the outside field, and it stops at a certain point, and it slows down and has to come around and go back the other way. And what is the determining point? So the strength of the outside field is directly connected to the strength of the inside field. And this is only in 2 dimensions, but we know that this goes in 3 dimensions. So now we know that there's a connection there, but that connection goes beyond the 2 dimensions. So in other words, when we look at the infinity loop and the interaction of plasmas, we can see, for instance, we know that the amino acid has an interaction between the 4 components of the being carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen. And then from that, we create a DNA and an RNA. But we find that they are interacting perpendicular to each other. So in other words, when these forces are coming together on one plane, and as they grow and as they increase, they have to exchange energy on a different plane. Okay, and this is what we see with the Earth. Same thing. We have a northern rotating hemisphere and a southern rotating hemisphere. But although that these 2 hemispheres are rotating in an opposite direction, and then you have your x-axis, your field of your rotating field, you have your y-axis, which is your polar field, and then you have your z-axis, which indicates the strength of the field. What keeps all these fields together? So there's something that is connecting everything together. Okay, and this Gans of connection allows us, for instance, to be connected to space via the Earth. It allows us to be connected to our significant other through love. And it allows us to transcend between matter state and plasma state. So the connection, in other words, can be on the same plane, can be on the same energy level, or it can be in between energy levels. Now, it can also be between ranges. And then between ranges, it can also be between dimensions. So there aren't any limitations. And the point that I want to say is, so this is our tiny little perfect world. And the reason it's so tiny is because the universal power is so great. Our Earth is tiny because the universal power is so great. And our tininess is unnecessary because the way we keep that tininess is by draining the energy. So we can make a different connection, and there is a way to do that. And it all has to do with how energy is moving from positive to negative, giving and taking, flowing. And binding. And so here, this is a binding energy. And this is what's keeping us in quarantine here. If we want to participate with the rest of the universe, we have to understand the principal interaction of flowing energy. And it's a two-way street. Energy is always in motion in 2 directions. So when we look at how we feed ourselves, we know there's a destination, us, that's our destination. But we know that there's a source of energy, and that's the universe. And when we look at the size of our tiny planet compared to the energy of the universe, and we see the difference, and then we look at the size of our bodies, and we compare that to the size of the Earth, and we see the difference. Now you understand why we as plasmatic beings have this tremendous dynamic transfer state. because our size as a destination is incredibly tiny compared to the energy of the vastness of the universe. So why are we drawing energy from ourselves when the universe provides? When someone asks you about plasma, just tell them it's a kind of energy state, and it's very, very important. And all things work in combination. There's a pushing and pulling of magnetic and gravitational forces, and they create a balance. And from that balance, there's an energy in motion. But in order for us to enter into the universe, into the universal community, there's another rule that we are ignoring, and that is the ethos of the universe, which involves morality, compassion, and courage. And there is a connection. And the reason for that connection is because life wants to live. Well, if life wants to live, why does it want to do that? So I say, well, why is not the question? Why is the answer? There's a Gans of connection to making life want to live. And with the plasma science, we are now able to make that connection because we know how to convert energy and restore our emotional and physical vitality. So when we feel as if we discovered something and we're so proud, understand that, when you arrive at a destination and someone is already there, then you're not the discoverer. Okay, so let's not be too bold. If we want to understand how things work, we need to be a little bit more humble. And the reason for that is because when we get even smaller, then we can get larger. And you can't get larger if you're already too large. So it all depends on what you want. And so this is all part and parcel of the learning about soul transmutation. And so we understand that there is the soul of the man and the soul of the body, and the two interact, and energy is flowing back and forth. So within the soul of the body, energy is flowing from the soul of the body to the body, and it goes around. But we also know that the energy flows from the soul of the man to the brain, which controls everything else. And so there's that transformation. And then there's a third link, the connection between the soul of the man and the soul of the body. And we really haven't fully explained that, except we do know that the emotion is the main connector. And so how do we work on that? And we have to have a trust in the universe. And we cannot tell the universe to shut up, because the universe deals in reality, not in make-believe. So when we look at the stacker unit, that is a perception of reality, where we see two fields come together, they form another field, any other field. That is the manifestation, and it's the plasma that leads to this. It's the plasma feeding that leads to the manifestation. So the manifestation doesn't have to be just tangible. It can be non-tangible or visible or non-visible. So plasmatic or physical. So we call the difference the conversion from dark matter to light matter. But understand, there is a plasmatic reality and a physical reality. And whichever reality we're operating in, that is the form artifact. So the emotion of presence is also a form artifact of the energy in motion. But the strength of that field is determined by what you give your time and attention to. So when you look at something and you say, well, I've discovered something, understand what's in it. When you look at the surface, you're only looking at the superficiality. You have to look at the substance. The quality of that field is determined by the strength of the field, and it's the strength of the field that determines the quality. So when we seek energy at the expense of others, and we do that through double crossing them, through deception. We find the universe doesn't work that way. If that's how you want to operate, then you're going to be very lonely. The universal community draws energy from the greatest source, and it brings it in, turns it around, and gives it out. And this energy is constantly in motion. And it is the connection with the universe that keeps this energy flowing. So that's all you have to do, is you figure out how to that, turn on to the energy of the universe and drop out of your physicality into your soul. Let your soul direct you. And that way you provide the pattern, you get the energy, and you actually don't have to do anything. This is how we are the connectors, and we have a tremendous amount of energy because of this relationship to the inner field and the outer field. So as messengers of peace and friendship, we at the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute have put this public plasma science into the public domain. But in order for us to be successful, in order for this planet to be successful, it has to understand the merits of the World Peace Treaty, where we not only sign it with a pen, but with our hearts, because that is representative of our physical and emotional harmony, and it contributes to our physical and emotional vitality. So as we gain this knowledge how energy fields are manifest, then we find out the truth. And as truth seekers, the question really becomes, can we become the difference makers? And so the challenge is there. We have the dynamic plasma state within us, and we see the vast universal community around us. In order to connect these two fields, plasma science needs to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. Thank you. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Mark. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm not sure I got everything. If you could bring those those safety pins back up, maybe I can ask a question. But while you're doing that, if there's anyone here who's here for the first time and you'd like to introduce yourself to us, where you're from and who you are, please
Yes,
feel free.
I am.
No, we know you.
I have a question for Alex.
Go right ahead.
Alex, you showed the cup of life and the gravitational and the magnetic field. Yes, thank you. Can you bring the green circle and the blue circle? I think there is one of, yes. It's okay, it's okay. When you see, you said the inner gravitational and the outer is magnetical. Actually, when you run the reactor, what you will see? Do you see the nano-coated release the field, or the plates which is releasing the field? I have a purpose from this question, and
So
100% I know your question. I know you you know the answer, but it is for the knowledge seekers to understand what's going on.
So yes, it's a very important question. And so we know that there's a difference between the coils and the plates, right?
Yes, and there is a difference between the nano coating and un-nano coating.
Right.
Okay, what we notice that the un-nano coating, which is releasing its molecule to the environment, due to the gravitational field of the nano.
Releasing its what to the environment, you said?
Its body.
Okay. It just broke up. I didn't hear that. Okay.
You didn't see that the zinc plate with the time will be vanished?
Nano coated?
No,
No.
the plate. You didn't notice that
It'll give itself up, yeah.
yes, yes. So in this case, the negative and the positive, it's very, very important to understand it both ways in the physical science and in the plasma science. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Zero. So just to restate that, there's a movement of energy between the physicality and the plasmatic condition, and what is causing that movement is this connection. So we haven't been talking about that connection. We've just been talking about the direction of flow and the strength of flow. But this connection is very, very important, because when you ask yourself the question, what are we doing on the plasma science? Well, we are plasma beings. So what are we doing at this meeting? So this meeting has a connection. And why do we keep coming every week? And why do we keep learning more and more? And why are we excited to learn more and more? Because actually, as we say, the knowledge brings the truth. So there's a connection there. But the truth brings you peace, okay? Because the truth, you don't have to cover up the truth. If you want to cover up the truth, then you have to expend energy to do so. So you expend less energy by discovering the truth. This is just mind-boggling why we're having so much trouble understanding this. So I would like to make another point on that. Would that be okay, Mark?
Yes, of course.
So I have brought in this, let's see if I can, where are we here? Oh, we've gone too far. I see, okay. I'm getting my seminars confused. So let's say here we have two forces that are coming together, and wherever they come together, that's kind of where they are, right? I mean, there's no reason for them to come here, except they're here, as opposed to being somewhere else. So what is unseen is the relationship of this plasma field to something else. So when we look at the universe, and we could get to see the what we call the manifestation of physicality with respect to the universe, but we have to see that there are fields that are working together, and these fields are not visible. And the reason we know there is because our universe is there, and it didn't come from nowhere. It came somewhere, and wherever it is, it was based on some kind of energy flow. And for the vast majority of us, we don't have the equipment to see what is going on a, shall we say, a macroscopic basis. So when we look out into the universe, you need a telescope or a research center to see what's going on. And then we need someone with the intelligence to interpret that. So when we look at the fundamental principles of the Trinity, then we know from our science that there's a relationship between the electron and the atom and the proton. Then the combination of the two create the atom. But the explanation was never so satisfactory, simply because we could see the field going out, but we couldn't see the field coming in. And we know that there has to be a field coming in because, hello, there's a field. So, and if, they say, well, what goes around comes around. Well, okay. Well, what makes it go around and what makes it come around? So in other words, to go and come back, it has to stop and it has to start. Okay. Okay, so there has to be some kind of link, and that link is the MAGRAV condition. So that means in order to come in, it has to come to a field, and it has to go out, it has to go out from the source. So this rotating field on the outer edge of our universe is the plasmatic field. So, Mark, I'm trying to directly answer your question. In order to maintain this principal universal line magnetics, that's a MAGRAV condition. At the outer edge, in order to turn it back around, there has to be another MAGRAV. A MAGRAV within a MAGRAV, and they work together. The size of that field on the outer is going to be determined by the overall size of the field of the MAGRAV condition. Our universe is so mature that it is so well organized that the only problem child is really our little tiny perfect universe, which we call Earth. And it is it's not working properly, right? It's working counterproductive to this. So we are breaking the connection, in other words. So we want to make the connection, and so we have to understand how the energy flows. The energy comes in and the energy goes out, and there's a connection in between. So what are we? Are we the energy coming in, or are we the energy taking it out? Or are we the messengers? Are we the connectors?
No, I was just having a trouble understanding with the safety pin, why you have this circle at the bottom. It would seem like the plasma could easily turn that corner. And now you're saying it has to make a complete circle and then go back around. Is that what you're saying, or am I missing?
That's exactly what I'm saying, because when you have two negative charges, you're not changing the charge. It is still a negative charge. So you have two charges that are the same, so they repel. So when you come around that corner, that charge on the other side is the same charge as you, so that charge is going to repel, isn't it? Well, if it repels, then it's going to have to go a wider circle. Okay, but it doesn't. Okay, it turns very nicely. So there has to be an additional force to tighten that. And that additional force is the MAGRAV condition. So you don't need a big fat MAGRAV at the ends. You can reduce the size. And this is exactly how the safety pin works. So you've got two things in this safety pin. One, look at the shine of the metal. That's your luster. Two, the springiness of the metal, right? That's the convergence of the energy fields around the rotating field on the right.
And why do we have to understand this? And why is this important to understand?
Well, if you don't understand this, then in order for us to get this energy, then we have to steal from others. We have to stop stealing. We have to understand how the universe is connected. I've said this before. We are interdependent with everything. So when we look at the plasma science, there's a direction of flow. There's a field strength. You've got your plasma at the center core, and the position of that is determined by other plasmas. And the interaction of those plasmas is your dynamic plasma. So what is the determining factor? It's the connection. There is a connection of force that is unseen. And, you know, we're all from Missouri, right? If we don't see it, we don't believe it. Well, you understand the safety pin and how it works. If, let's put it this way, you have a springy metal and you want to create a safety pin, you can just bend it, can't you? But some genius figured out, hey, if I put an extra rotation in the endpoint there, I will really have a lot of spring. And then all I have to do is to bring the two ends together and lock it in. And now I've got my safety pin. This little basic safety pin explains to you how these transition metals work. You have luster, you have tensile strength, springiness, and you have a rotating field.
I'm probably still a few classes back with the X, Y, and Z axis. X being rotation, Y being polarity, and the final one is the field strength.
Okay, well, the green diagram, that's your field strength, how big that is, okay? That's your field strength. But there's at some point, the energy has to go around. Maybe if we go.
Yeah, but it's not the matter state. Why does it, why are you equating it like it can't make the turn or something? Or it can make the turn, but you're saying it needs
Well, how about look at
to
this daisy?
Okay,
Look, okay, look, the center core is round. The petals are flattened out. There's a rotating field around the petals, isn't there?
so you're saying there's a magrev at the tip of each one of these petals?
That's what I'm saying. Thank you very much.
Okay, well.
Why would the energy come back? And then you see how pointed the petals are.
I thought it only went out to a certain point and then would automatically return. Some would go out farther, some would go out less far and turn back in to the center. But you're saying like a water fountain, not all of the water goes straight. Some of it only goes a foot and back in to the center. So you're saying they need a magrev to turn?
That's right. You need
Okay.
yeah, you need a magrev to turn. Because it's going too fast. You know, if you think, see, you can have a rotating field around this gold colored core, okay? And you see this is all made up of a hexagonal formation. But, you know, if you really look closely at this hexagonal formation in the center, you'll find that it is in a spiral form. They're not just in round circles, but it's in a spiral form. So this is the way the Earth goes around the sun.
So there must be millions or billions of magrevs just within this tiny, for that to happen. In all
You'll
these
get a-
different positions,
Okay,
for the
you
fields
get
to
an-
turn around and come back towards the center.
you get an A plus.
Yeah, but I don't get it. I mean, not really.
Well, you just did. Well,
I know,
if
yeah.
you, okay.
Yeah, I
when
never
you-
thought about that. I just thought the field went out and reached its point, depending, and then turned back. You know, the fields can
Yeah,
only
why?
go out so far.
Why?
Yeah, right. Why did it turn around? Right.
Well, that turns around. Why? Because the daisy is smart enough to know how to build, okay? I don't think the daisy went to university to learn this. I don't think the daisy spoke to mommy and daddy daisy to learn this.
Right, so that
I
makes-
think this
go
is the strength field of the daisy. How much it can give, how much it can take from the environment.
Why isn't the whole daisy round and gold? You know, why are we bringing in these petals? And these petals, I mean, the way they're structured is totally different from the hexagonal formation in the center.
You have three field forces in this picture, like a skin of the man. Every strength take a position, how much it take, how much it give. So and depend on what this flower need. And that was a question I did want to ask. Is this showed the totality of the flower, what this flower need or what this flower emit?
Yes.
How we see it?
Yeah, no, this is what the flower emits. Okay, because what does the flower want to do? It wants to procreate, right? And so it creates a pollen. And what does it want to do? It uses the insects to take the pollen from one plant and take it to another plant, right? So it uses the insects. How does an insect know to come? Is it an insect or is it a moth? It doesn't matter. You know, like something is attracted to this particular configuration. And so how does it do that?
But don't forget, the flower is very jealous, more jealous than than the
Nobody is as jealous as the human. You know, we're jealous of what the other has when we all have the same thing. It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, the reason it doesn't make any sense is because we're looking at too small a picture. You have to look at the big picture. So you look at the strength of the universe and you see the weakness of the human. And the human is not weak. The human is far more capable. The plants can't walk, but they know the rules. We can walk. We have more capabilities. We can walk, we can talk, we can do all sorts of things, and we can have a lot of fun. Okay, but the way things are on this planet right now, it's not a lot of fun. But it is fun because, as Mr. Kesh says, you know, we're talking about the Corona dividend. You know, some countries are having that dividend being really rubbed in their face, and it's being manifest through the number of casualties. You know, fortunately for us here in Canada, we don't have that number of fatalities, but you know, that could change. I don't care what happens that way because we understand where the energy is coming from and we know how to regulate it. And every day we increase in those skills. So, you know, as we keep coming and gathering more knowledge, we better know more. So that's the connection.
So when you're using cosmic rays and things, there must be no magrev there to turn it around back to itself, or maybe there is. I know it's return. Well,
wait a second.
maybe I'm mixing myself up.
No. There has to be a marriage. There has to be a reason. Okay, so you know, maybe these cosmic rays, they're not attracted to you, you know, but that doesn't mean you don't have attracting characteristics. So you attract what you need and what you want. there are cosmic rays that are attracted to what they want. So when we look at the universe, there are, it's boundless, and that's the point. So our actions are binding us to this planet, but we know that we can go in other places. Now, that energy that we can see that is creating that universe is not visible to us, but we know that it's there. And thank goodness for that, because as dumb as we are, and if we can't see it, we don't believe it. So you look up in the sky, something is there. So there's your proof. Now, just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that it's not there. It is there. Okay, so why is it there? Because there's a reason. And so we don't know the reason. That's why we are all knowledge seekers, to learn what these reasons are. And so when we see that there are forces of connection that are not visible or not tangible, and that we understand that we were born, and so whatever we've done from the time that we were born has been a combination of the plasmatic and physical reality. But before we were born, it was very much a plasmatic reality only. Okay, so there's a connection between that. So how do we make that connection? And because we don't trust in that connection, then we say that connection doesn't exist. Well, you better trust in that connection, because our explanation for being here otherwise has no answer. And our explanation for the universe being there has no answer. So we see that the strength of the universe is what gives us the strength. We have a bountiful capability. And I don't know, the amount of energy that we have within us to create us is what, 18 Hiroshima bombs or something like that. So it's a phenomenal amount of energy that is bound up within our physicality. And it's governed by our soul, which continues to govern us because it continues to make that Gans of connection.
Okay, as I said, is there anyone here who would like to introduce themselves who hasn't been here before? Just tell us your name and where you're from, perhaps. I was just looking at the center of this yellow, or not the center, all these little round circles, and it almost looks, look at they're so perfectly shaped, and it almost looks like a space gap.
No, they're not round. They're hexagonal.
They look kind of round. They're hexagonal.
Yep.
But I was just noticing the perfect spacing there. It seems.
Honeycomb.
Yeah. And then like it's almost wrapping around itself in a way. And maybe that's just an illusion.
In a spiral field.
Yeah. Well, there may not be any newcomers here today, or they're just a little shy to open their mic. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask a question or bring up a point, perhaps? Mernez, you have your mic open. It could be open by mistake. I'll close it for you. So if we're transiting from one point in the universe to another, we certainly don't want any magrevs, do we, in the way to turn any fields back? Or is this a whole different topic and a different subject? You'd want all the fields to arrive at the point of destination. You certainly wouldn't want any turning back to the origin, would you? Or again, I may.
Oh, what that would be, yeah. Can you imagine, eh?
Yeah, you come out with a half a leg or something.
Well, you know, I'm thinking back to the Philadelphia experiment, and they actually did have those problems. But you see, that part of the science is not new. That like we've gone so far beyond that. So you know, when the universal body enhancement unit was first introduced, we called it the Model T. You know, to kind of represent its position in terms of advancement, even though it was well advanced. But I think it's going to be quite shocking when we look at the overall advancement, because many of the so-called problems that we have on this planet are going to be resolved and rectified because of the changing of the field strength. And it just, what's kind of holding us back is really this peace dome. And the reason for it is just strength, field strength. So frankly, if I may, and this is, you know, maybe this is where it's really becomes appropriate. Gotta get back. Sorry.
And I think that was capillaries, what you were saying earlier, rather than capillary. Yeah, this is the picture that I was thinking about. And how the
well,
field
this would be
turns.
matter state. This would be matter state, very compact, very, you know, close together. If you were to open up these, you need more space, right? If you want to go from this to this, you need more space. But as these forces come together in the center, where are they going to go? If these forces come into the center and they collide, where are they going to go? They're going to go through a different dimension. So we see that with water. When waves collide, the water goes up, right? And when the waves are going apart, then you get a trough, right? Where the trough is below the water level and the wave is above the water level. And so this is where you see energy coming out, and it comes on a different, on a perpendicular form. So the rotating field is your x-axis, the collision in the center, if you will, is your polar axis, and the size of the field is your field strength. And you know, when this goes out, how far does it go? And you see, well, it has to go to the end. Why does it go to the end? Oh, do you think it's that maggraph on the end there? Do you think it's that maggraph around here and at the end? And then, of course, the other picture I wanted to show you was this one. So you see the radius of the inside, which represents its strength, is directly related to the radius of the outside. So if the field strength is the same, then the magnetical gravitational relationship individually has to be the same. But if we increase the rotation, then we reduce the size of the inside field and increase the size of the outside field. We still have the same maggrav though.
So if there were no magravs along the way, the fields would just go straight out and the entity or the energy would just not be there. It would go someplace else. Each individual, let's say, ray or field.
Yes,
If it doesn't turn back, right, there won't be anything left.
Right. So the turning back maggrav is the point of connection, the destination point.
Well, as somebody I knew who was 90 years old, and they would say, I've got more behind me than I have ahead of me in the matter state. We know just the opposite in the plasmatic state. There's much more ahead of us than we have behind us. But we do need to build a very
No,
good foundation.
that's a big point, you see. That's a big point. So, you know, if you have, you know, a lot of money, and you know, where did that money come from? So it came from others. So the more you have, that means the others have less. So at some point in time, if that trend continues, and you know, this is what they're always asking us to do, they want us to do more and more with less and less, and so eventually we can do everything with nothing. And you know, unfortunately, if that is your goal, to have all of the money, then eventually you will fulfill your goal, and then you're going to be very unhappy, because the whole process of accumulating this money is what gave you the joy. But you know, at some point in time, you come to the end, and there's no money anymore to be gotten, so you can't come back around. So in other words, you end up being very lonely.
Okay, I don't want to keep the mic myself. Is there anyone else who'd like to bring up a point or something they have a question about this teaching?
I would like to share. I would like to share something,
Please.
if I can.
You want
And
the
let's-
screen?
Yes, and let's see if there is some money equal to this picture. What I'm gonna.
So I'm going to stop the sharing.
I don't know if you.
Well, as a
No,
scientist,
I don't think you need.
money won't make you happy, but we all have the right to find that out for ourselves, don't we?
Just look at that.
Naomi,
We all know what this is. We see a damage to the side of the brain. We see part of the brain missing. Exactly in the back of the eye position. Blind and part of the brain missing. This is after an accident. This was a murder attempt on my life, which Fabio and Naomi got involved in. And this is the brain of Naomi. CT scan of Naomi after the accident. Part of the brain was on the street. One eye blind. And this is Naomi. And doctors cannot even find where the piece is missing. When you understand the power of the technology, we don't need to talk. When you look at the videos, you cannot even find what's missing in the brain.
I think we need to spread these pictures. Let all the scientists, let all the people see if they can match part of this knowledge.
can you
And
put
it
it back
is-
down, back up, please, someone? Or how did this picture come on the screen? I'm not sure. Thank you.
It is there, free for everyone. I hope they understand what is behind it. Thank you, Alex.
Well, there's a
Huge
lot
amount.
behind it, as we know. I was listening to the teaching of Mr. Kesh on Friday, and he said, with the conventional nano coding, we can't even reach the speed of light. So there's a different type of, well, transferring of energies past the nano coding, or that hasn't been taught yet. So yes, there's way more ahead of us than we've learned or we've absorbed. And these things will be continued to be taught out of Tehran and out of from the Keshe Foundation. And if the world leaders want to use this universal body enhancement spaceship unit, please pledge your nation to peace. The faster we can do this, and maybe faster isn't the right word, the faster you can avail yourself of this new technology. I always wondered how I got here on a Sunday afternoon studying magnetic fields. I couldn't have imagined it 5 years ago or 10 or my whole lifetime that I'd be interested in understanding and trying to absorb more and share more of this huge, huge knowledge that's being delivered on this planet. It's a huge knowledge. And thank you for being here as well. Obviously, you're a knowledge seeker and you're looking to understand more about yourself and the universe. And perhaps the soul is the one that's brought us here, the souls, for this time in this place, in this position. Misty?
May I add something? Yes.
Of course.
Hi, this is Misty from Michigan. I just wanted to add a little more to the vertical friends of ours. And you were saying how they don't talk or walk, but I believe that that's the magnetic pole that they're using, the bees, and they're using their legs and giving their plasma need to survive. So a little help from our friends.
I noticed you put something in the chat as well. Tulip bulbs won't grow again if it is cut while in flower and not allowed to die off, making its return. I didn't know that.
Yes, you might get a couple ears, but no bloom the next year. But that's it.
Hello.
Yes, Martin, go right ahead.
Hi. I'd like to make a quick comment. My name is Martin Medina. I'm from
Yes, sir.
Corona, California.
Okay.
Ironically, Corona. So, but anyways, hi Alex, how you doing?
And
Nice to hear from you.
that makes 5 people from the United States. We're doing well. Thank you, Martin, for joining us.
Thanks.
If it wasn't
We're
for the
doing well.
international community, I think this meeting would look rather small, but it isn't.
Right, I'm glad to be here. A quick comment. Has anybody used the #1 cap Gans as a first aid spray? So the other day I cut my finger doing garden stuff. And so I went inside, and sprayed it with the Gans so it wouldn't get infected. Surprisingly, the bleeding stopped. And I didn't put a Band-Aid or nothing like that, but it was healed within a day. So I just wanted to comment that same thing happened to my son. He cut his finger with a knife inside the house. I sprayed it with Gans and the bleeding stopped and it healed within a day. So I was just interested and surprised that that can happen.
Martin,
Is
are you referring to plasma water, not the Gans itself, correct?
Yes, sorry. Yes, the plasma water from the
Cup number 1.
cup #1. Yes.
Right, and we know there's always fields within the water. Even if you let it settle for a week or a year, there's probably still fields available in the water. But yes, or Gans, let's say, in the water.
Correct.
But for the most part, we let it settle until it's very clear and just use the water portion of it, not the Gans itself.
Right,
Okay,
right.
I
I was
just
just
wanted to-
using the water,
Yep.
and surprisingly, the bleeding stopped.
I know Leanna had mentioned something like that recently about something that healed over, and I think she was mentioning the CO2 cup rather quickly, or it could have been a burn that she was referring to, that it wasn't going away, but she used the plasma water and certainly cured, or not cured, but skinned over rather quickly.
Yes, I was just surprised that would happen. I just thought I'd share that. Thank you.
Thank you. Corona, California, is that near, is it San Francisco or LA, or where are you located?
It's 20 minutes east of downtown Los Angeles.
Thank you again for joining us, and hopefully you'll continue. Have you just
We're
discovered
trying.
this knowledge, or have you been around the foundation for some time?
I've been listening on and off since 2015, 2016, when we first started out with the McGrath unit. So sometime back, I just haven't really put any effort to it until now. I've been trying to be a distributor, but there's no products available yet. So I'm just hoping and praying we can do something better.
Well, just your presence here is very good.
And I've been sharing Gans water with everybody, like a gallon at a time, see what's happening. And the latest I can share is my father-in-law had the vaccine, and he's been deteriorating slowly. And I don't know whether his age, he's 87. So I don't know whether it's his age that's deteriorating or the vaccine that's deteriorating. But he seems to be doing better using cup number 1, Gans water.
Yes, the plants love it as well.
Right. Right. So far, so good.
Yes, it's interesting that I've shared the plasma water recently in the last few months with a couple people who had a need for it, let's say, and they reported very good results, but it seemed to stop there. No interest in continuing forward with it. Like, tell me more, I need to learn more. It was just, they got better and they continue on their journey, which is fine. It's all depends when the soul is ready to interact.
Yeah.
But at least they're aware of the technology, and as it becomes more and more, they'll come on more and more. Just like you were just dabbling in it maybe, or playing with it, or didn't think it really worked, or maybe it was coincidental, something along that line. But as more and more come out, I think more and more will gravitate back towards the foundation. We just put a seed there, let's say.
Right. They're becoming less skeptical and believing more. Yeah, I would agree.
There's also an interesting test you can try next time. Just try regular water to see if you get the same result. Perhaps it was the interaction with the plasma that initially upgraded your ability to heal yourself.
Well, when you put regular water, you kind of just wash it out. Your cut, you wash it out, but it'll still keep bleeding until it coagulates. But when I put the Gans water, it coagulated almost instantly. It stopped bleeding within like 20 seconds. I mean, it wasn't a severe cut, it was a small cut, but needless to say, it did stop bleeding.
From what I meant to say is that, so the zinc nanomaterial that's present within the water at some point, it's as if the information on your intention is kind of uploaded to your body on what you want to occur.
Oh, I see.
And so, like when you speak with your father, or when you talk about your father, is it if it's touched his emotion, where we believe a lot of illnesses begin, or
Derive
the
from, right.
causations come from a lot of from emotions, then you can see how, in a way, he may be healing himself through the knowledge that he didn't intend to seek out, but was given to him, and your intention also that followed that.
Right. I see. Yeah, that's possible. So in other words, we have power we don't understand.
Or
Right.
we had forgotten.
Or
Right.
even the cup, Mr. Kesh said, we made it to look simple, but it's not simple. There's a lot going on in this cup, and it would take man hundreds of years to understand
To
it.
understand.
Yeah, so there's a lot more going on in these cups than we understand at this point, but we can still use them.
Right.
Fried, yes, go ahead, Martin, and then Fried will be next. He has a hand up. Fried, you don't need to put your hand up. You can just come right in whenever you would like to, whenever someone else stops. But please continue, Martin. It's nice to hear your voice.
So my mother-in-law, she has arthritis in her hands, and when she sprays the Gans on her hands, it seems to be helping her. Whether it's again emotional on her part or just
That's
simply it's going
nice.
to work.
That is
helping her.
very nice.
For me, that's all I have to share. Thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Thank you very much. Very positive. And hopefully you'll join. Stephen, you're also in California. Are you anywhere around LA or in a different location? I'm hoping different knowledge seekers will eventually start to link up as we come together more and more, and as more knowledge seekers appear.
Yeah, I'm in the area.
I'm
in the air. I'm all over.
Okay, yes, your soul is always present. Yes.
I want to say Like is in LA somewhere too.
Say again.
It's best we stay semi anonymous, I guess, as Mr. Kesh told me. You know, some of the things that you say bring attention to you, so you may want to just not say too much.
And I think we have Ike in the region as well. So yep. Ike has been doing some distributing. So if you, Martin, connect up with Ike, maybe you'll make a friend there.
Okay, I will research that. Thanks.
Yeah, you could send him something in the chat here while you're both together. Just a suggestion. I'm not saying you have to do that.
Right. It would be a good idea. Work together.
Yes, we do need more Americans getting on board. For some reason, they just don't, even when they see the technology with themselves, they just seem to, okay, I'm better, and move on. Not a lot of interest yet, but it's building. And I'm sure there's a lot of suppression. Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of interest in the government layers for sure. I'm sure they've been working since they received the key day and night on this in certain areas and certain labs, but haven't been able to unravel it because they need to sign the peace treaty. This is the key to getting the keys.
I think there's a lot of suppression in this area for some reason. There was some gentleman commenting about Gans helping out the coronavirus on the radio about 6 months ago, and that came and gone, and nothing happened from it. It got a little bit of attention, but it wasn't much. It was like maybe a 10-second radio comment, and that was it. But I haven't heard much Gans in the US yet.
Well, if you think back, we went all the way to the press club and in DC, and that was an interesting exercise that we went through back then. So
yes, as we heard from Mr. Kesh earlier, what I played there, we've gotten ravaged a few times, but now we're smarter. So, and we don't always tell everything. Some of the things are staying in the background, but the world leaders and many people at the highest scientific level are well aware, just like the rabbis, the imams, and the ayatollahs are well aware of who Mr. Keshe is, I think. And that was another funny thing. He said, after I die, the people on this planet will know who I am. I thought that would all happen before time, but perhaps not.
Another quick comment, there's no money in it. So that's why people are not interested in it. You know, they're not going to be millionaires doing the Keshe Foundation stuff. So I think that's probably why the loss of interest.
Well, many people have made lots of money on this technology, as I understand it, but that's not what it's really about. But there's, and the Keshe Foundation as a structure will be one of the most powerful corporations in the world within the next 5 years, and within the top 10. So there's plenty to be made, but I don't think it's for ourselves. It's to be put back into the foundation so that more knowledge will come out over time, but not to deny yourself a good living either. We want to have a comfortable living. There's no problem with that. You don't have to take all your clothes off and give it to the poor or anything like that. We'll live a very comfortable life.
All right, I understand that. We need to maybe coat your houses in gold. This way everybody will come down and check it out.
Oh yes, there's going to be a lot of shocks coming in, but they're all going to be positive and hopefully towards the right direction. Free, did you want to come in here, or are you still with us? I'm just going to look for you.
Yes, I'm with you, and my comment is about what you can do. You don't even need plasma water or something. What I did before I even heard about Mr. Keshe and Magrath and whatever, accidentally one day I put my, when I did a cut in my finger, not a too big cut, I put it in my mouth and then it healed almost immediately. It coagulated, but we know now that the mouth is a Gans environment. So we don't even need the cup when we don't have it handy.
That's a very interesting point. Yes, it's just like what Mr. Keshe was explaining about the food converting into energy and back. So there's, you put it into a different environment. And I don't know what actually, yeah, I don't know.
Environment, as I understand.
I don't know exactly what happened there, but very nice report.
So we have it all always with us.
We've been carrying a lot with us, but we just haven't been finding the key. The keys are in the pocket, but the pockets, for some reason, we don't realize it's there.
And we still have the materials outside, so that we slowly understand that it's even not in the material.
Very nice.
Okay.
Anyone else would like to come in and make a point or ask Alex a question, or Jalal, or maybe one of the others? And of course, there is another conference coming up in Austria, I believe, in the beginning of October, is it? Could be wrong. I think it'll be at the new, in and around the new exposition center. Some of these things are going to be for leaders and scientists to demonstrate the technology privately, and it won't be shown to the public. But other knowledge seekers are welcome to go, making advance reservations and so on. Lissy, you have your hand up. No need to raise your hand here for anyone. This is a family and we can respect each other and just open your mic when you feel led to. Do we need any translation?
Hello, Mark.
Yes.
I put my question in the chat because outside is very loud now, so very rude. So
Can I read it?
the noise. Yeah, please, you read.
How
Thank
do we, let's stay on the line. How do we identify when our physical soul is permanently in connection with the soul? How do we feel it? Because this connection is most important thing reaching now. Anyone? How do we identify when our physical soul is permanently in connection with the soul? And it is in connection with the soul. They're both aware of each other. There's a relationship there. One usually has the daytime and the other the nighttime, but there is a working relationship already between the souls.
Hi, Mark.
Yes, sir.
As I discussed last week, there's a disconnect. So the two souls are already connected. There's no problem there. It's our awareness, and our awareness that we recognize is really only in the physical state. And so if we're not recognizing our soul intentions, then we are disconnected from that. So we're just operating exclusively in the soul of the body.
Now, they must be aware because one trapped the other, so to speak.
Well, the souls are aware.
Yeah.
The souls are aware, but our interpretation of what the souls are aware is not aware, because we're looking at it from the physical point only. We're only looking at it half the picture. So the only way to maintain half the picture is to actually be disconnected. So where do you direct the connection then to? So you have to direct it more to more of the matter state, right? That's why we're so physical.
Or more of the soul, perhaps, Alex. Directing the energies into the soul will allow the soul to come out, so to speak.
That's right. That's right. And have more confidence and trust in that, because then it's automatic. If you have the trust in your soul, then like the siphon effect, once you make that connection, that energy is moving and it continues to move. And as long as you continue to feed that, then the energy will come in. And as it comes in, then you've created the pattern, then the energy will come out. I would like to, if I may, just extend Lissy's question here, because
yes,
one of the things on this, and I've left this page up because it's a very important page that Mr. Kesh has put forward to, and there are two fields here, and maybe we're not seeing it. So there's a direction of flow from the proton to the electron. So what we're talking about is the magnetical fields that are transferred from the large twin plasma of the proton to the plasma of the smaller twin. So when we say twin, we assume that they're the same size, the same in every way. But they are the same, but one is a mini-me of another. And in order to maintain that, the energy is flowing from the higher to the lower. When that energy gets in there, how does that energy stay? And this is why it has to go into a rotating field. But if it goes into the rotating field, and let's say on this picture now, so you draw an arrow from the proton to the electron, right? And then the field rotates in the electron. Well, which way does the pole go in relationship to the x-axis? Which direction does the y-axis go in relation to the x-axis? It goes perpendicular. So in other words, it goes perpendicular to the original field flow. So this magnetical field that is being transferred is along the x plane. And then the speed of rotation increases because the rotating field is constantly getting fed. And then as that grows in strength, that energy has to come out. Right, so then it has to go into the other dimension. You have to see this connection. This is going back to one of your original questions of this business with the paperclip or the safety pin.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to see the relationship between the whole magrav and the magrav at the outer boundary. So in other words, the entire boundary is a series of rotating fields.
Well, that was one of my questions from Friday. If you take the energies of the soul of the man and the energies of the soul of physicality and transfer them to a location, now we're talking the energies, what happens to the physicality? Does it disappear or does it just stay there as a, I don't know, just matter state?
Well, again, Mark, we are on planet Earth, right? So we are, let's say right now, say for instance, sitting in front of the computer. But you understand that the Earth is hurtling through space. It's whipping around the sun. And the whole solar system is whipping around through the universe. So although we're kind of sitting there sedentary, falling asleep maybe, we are spinning around not only within our solar system, but within our universe as well. So all you have to do is figure out what your point of reference is. But we are within a field. And in that field, we're oblivious to the motion that's on the outside. We would, if you've ever tried to do that, it's kind of an interesting experiment. It might make you sick actually, but you try and feel the rotation of the Earth. You could really get disoriented, and this is part of the problem that happens when you wake up. You start to, when you say wake up, I mean like wake up as in wake up to the reality. You lose your anchorage point because your anchorage point is not solid. This happened, to say my own personal experience. I believed in the physical science. I believed in our society and what it stood for, and I believed in the value system, and all of that let me down. So, I was firmly anchored in nothing. I was in the middle of space, really. There was no anchorage for me. So everything that I believed in let me down. And then I was given a, shall we say, a straw to hang on to. But that straw was very strong. Restored my health, restored my wife's health, and eventually restored my understanding of life. And the reason for that was because I had to answer the question, what changed? What did I believe in before, which let me down? And now I am being brought up, if you will. I'm slowing down, losing momentum, and then I had to turn the corner and come back up on the other side. But the difference was I went in with poor health, couldn't kick a soccer ball 10 yards. And then 3 weeks later, I could kick a soccer ball 60 yards. What happened? And then you say, gee, I'm from Missouri, show me. Yeah, well, here, just, why don't you just stand there 10 yards apart and I'll drill a soccer ball at you and I'll show you. But, is that what we have to do?
And I'm from the church and I say it's a miracle.
Yeah, well, praise the Lord, eh?
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 Can't explain it any other way, can he?
Yeah, that's right. Well, so, and even the church let me down. So there you go. It was the financial system, the medical system, the church, it's a hat trick. all these things that I believed in, and they all let me down when I really needed them. And then a perfect stranger helps me when I least expected it. And then, you know, as we all want to be the devil's advocate, said, oh, you know, like, well, if you know, if you can cure cancer, why doesn't everybody, you know, why doesn't everybody know about it? And say, well, why is not the question, why is the answer? So I said, okay, fine. And then I had to learn about life. So some of these lessons that I've been teaching in the last few weeks are from that. And I haven't been able to discuss that because the knowledge hasn't moved forward enough, you know. We have to understand that the ethics and morality is absolutely vital to our progress. It's absolutely right. You can't go otherwise because of the binding forces of the energy, and the binding forces are limiting. So that's the fact of life. So
Yeah, maybe the church leader felt or sensed you were already cashed out by the medical society, so there was nothing left to take.
well, like I said
Lost
last week,
interest.
like I said last week, you know, there was an excommunication action, and you know, if this is the whole universe, and if you're part of that universe, and then you get excommunicated, like, where exactly do you go? You know, and then who pushes you out, and where did they get the authority to push you out? So all that is just a fabrication. You know, they say you're a legend in your own mind. So, you know, the one who's doing the excommunicating is actually, you know, fooling himself. And that was, you know, the breakthrough right then. So you only need, like any theory, you only need to break it down once. And like I said many times, and I'll repeat it again, you know, nothing that Mr. Keshler's ever taught has violated any single principle of physics. Not one, never. The only thing that, you know, we may disagree on is our methods, but, you know, being a North American, we're a little bit more rude.
Well, we think the church, at least the Vatican, knows what's going on, because we were told there was a representative there, a high-level representative at the inauguration of the new leadership in Iran. So they were represented and probably understand what's happening.
Yeah, but to see, the thing is, they're not understanding this Gans of connection that I was, you know, talking about today. So, you know, they become victims of their own morality. And why would you want to do that? I mean, especially if you're supposedly knowledgeable. You know, if you become knowledgeable, then you can become reasonable and sensible, and then you can make the connection. But if you can't make the connection, that means automatically you're disconnected. And then if you're disconnected, well, that explains the why, doesn't it? So you're not connected. So don't pretend. You can't pretend. There's no pretending. You can't play poker in the universe. Well, you can, but you're going to be lonely.
Alex, can I try to answer Lisa's question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Just understand this. We have a star formation of matter state to reach one level in the emotion state. So in this respect, if we have 4 bars of emotion, we will reach 1 bar of the soul level. So if the soul level works, let's say soul of physicality works with the soul of the man, that means this part of the soul, which one of them receive, it will change it will affect 4 parts of emotion. In this case, my dear, if you cry from happiness and joy and love and care in this aspect, you achieve the communication between the soul of physicality and the soul of the man. Because the universe worked in this way, giving unconditional in love and care. So I think there is a way to feel when there is an interaction between soul of physicality and soul of the man. And I hope this will answer your question.
Hello, Ed.
Hello. I'm just thinking about, I wanted to respond and with affirmation to what Jalal just said, but I've been thinking since Lissy asked that question, Mr. Kesh has actually addressed this for several weeks since he's been teaching us about this connection between the soul and the soul of physicality. And in the workshops, he's addressed it, but it's become clear that there are emotions. He talked in one of the workshops that there's emotions that we need to learn to define within ourselves. And I don't think that means to define it with words. It means we need to learn to recognize a new type of emotion or something that's there, but that we haven't yet paid enough attention to or been able to define it within us. And to define it within us means we need to become aware of it and then see its result and where it leads. Then he also talked about the importance of detachment. And I think the emotions that Jalal is referring to may be emotions that we haven't yet really learned to define or experience within ourselves. He mentioned love and several other emotions, but each of us, those are words, and each of us has a different experience of those words within ourselves, which we attach ourselves to. But I think it's evident that maybe we need to detach from our current definitions of certain emotions, or all of them that we have experienced, if they haven't brought us to a cognizance of the soul that we know of the attachment, and begin to open ourselves up to these new emotions. I think that the detachment or not attaching ourselves to what we currently, I guess I want to say, believe in or feel, we need to detach in order to be able to go further to experience those emotions that are closer to the soul and that will lead us into that connection. Jalal, does that make sense to you?
Yes, this is what we are learning to achieve.
Exactly.
But in the way that our physicality is structured, we see that it's structured by star formation of the amino acid. And this is in the matter state. When there is interaction in the star formation, it creates free plasma. And in this relationship to the emotion of the man, if we call the physicality is a matter state, and the emotion is the higher strength in this aspect, there is another part which is higher, and this is the soul. So this is like, it's like a math. If you take 4 parts of the emotion, you will reach a higher position, and this is the soul level. So go back in this aspect. When this part is interact with a similar, and this is, let's say, the soul of the man, because the plasma interact of each other to the similar plasmas interact. So high level of the soul of the man interact with high level of the soul of physicality, then you will see the effect in which is beneath that level. And this is the inertia to the soul level is the emotion, and the inertia to the emotion is the physicality. So you will see the interaction of these. So what you will see, I think a lot of people, they express the emotion part by crying, but it's not always sadness which make you cry. Sometimes very high happiness and joy, it make you cry. It's it's work of the feelings. So I think the level of we reach the soul by the highest in our emotion. What is the highest in our emotion? Is it the sadness? Is it the hate? Is it the anger? Or is it the love and joy and the care and peaceful and the happiness? All of this level of the emotions, which is reach to the soul level.
You know, Jalal, I've asked Mr. Kesh twice about how can we learn to define that feeling of recognizing our communication with the soul. And both times he gave an allegory of looking back at our lives, because the soul is in charge of our lives. Our souls have brought us to where we are today. And looking back at our lives and seeing their pattern to what has brought us to where we are today. That's how we can learn. He said this in relation to my question about learning to recognize the soul. And I've thought about it a lot. I can't say I really understand it, but I know the desires and the impulses that I've had at different times in my life that have sequentially led me to become, closer and closer to this technology and to recognize Mr. Kesh when he talked and the truth of the plasma science and stuff. And so I just wanted to bring that to light as well, because there's something there that's not tangible, that it's not an experience, but it's been in direction of our lives. And if we can look back at that and begin to try to recognize that, maybe it will help us recognize the actions of the soul.
Yes, and there'll be a lot of emotions we're not even aware of and that we will discover in the future, as I understand it.
Right.
So many emotions, we're not even aware of certain emotions. David D put in the chat, and if you're finished, Ed, would you like
Yes,
to?
yes, I'm finished.
Okay, but feel free to come back. Yes. David D said, what is the ego and where does it come from? I would think that could be the soul of physicality, is kind of like the ego, or this lion, let's say, that likes to roar and thinks it's in charge and is the top dog in the operation, but it's not. So where does the ego, what is the ego and where does it come from? Anyone would like? Yes, Shweta.
Thank you. This ego comes from somewhere, comes in and goes somewhere else. And I hope that will be good. And it will be in a form of love. The ego crashes in the form of love somehow. And I will add to Lizzie's question too. Thank you, Jalal. Thank you so much, my dear Alex. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Ed. I will add that as he said, ego. As we know, plasma in action, the ego comes and goes from somewhere it comes and somewhere it goes. And whatever it becomes, it depends on the point of view of yours. Is it an ego or is it an energy you don't need anymore? That is it. Of this illusion or visible light, you can say. I would add to Lizzie's question that what I do, I want to share that. And that is that I always believe in I am present. I learned, I get this knowledge here to be in the I am present. When even I'm in chaos, you know how the chaos is going, starting from your family. People want to ignore you. People want to say words to you and you don't like it. But this time we go neutral. We go in the I am present. I go like that. And the soul of physicality. When I go to the I am present and the soul of physicality able to see the light, the elevator of the soul of the universal field. And then I am in the elevator and there is a switch of love. I touched the switch of love and the elevator goes up and up and up. What is up? I don't know. What is large? I don't know. But there is so much love, I know. I am experiencing that. And then I become gel, I became water, I became no matter, I become an antimatter. And then I comes up and somewhere and I see the beauty and totality. And so much of the family, so much souls happy together out there in that structure. And when I come back with the same elevator, and I come back in this physical reality, in this visible, well, I say light. I cannot say it is reality or not. I can see like the pearl in the oysters, even in the darkness, the pearl is so shining. And I can see what is going on, what is the energy, what is negative and positive, and what is going to be neutral. And then I wish, and I can wish in the truthfulness, you know, I have seen the truth. And when somebody says to me, oh, you are a dreamer. Alex said in the last teaching, thank you to John Lennon, he sang the song. I say, you must say I am a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And that is the truth, the only truth. That is the way we are. So this is what I say in the I am present, when the two souls meet each other and becomes universal and comes back with the elevation of the truth and love. You have seen with your own eyes. Maybe it is intangible, but it is visible to you, only to you, because this is your point of view. That is what I want to say. And thank you. Thank you. I have said what I feel about the disease world question, and the ego question is, if we see the I am present, then you are not present in those things you don't need anymore. You are present in the present you want. That is the thing we have to see. The word kindness, the word love, the word care, light, depends on us, depends on the knowledge we are. This is all knowledge around us, whirling like plasma, like Magra. As said, you're turning, you're merging with an energy and then turning. That is a good experience too. Oh, you can see the way within. That is someone somewhere was waiting for you, and you turn from there. And that becomes a Magra position also, a position of love. You turn within with the love inside. You turn. You don't turn towards another thing like that. So there's always the elevator. There's the switch of love, and you are there. That is the no matter you are, and all that matters is it. So it is like that. So this is what I want to share, and thank you all for listening to me. Thank you so much. All the love always. Salam, namaste, salute.
I think ego, we can express it in one word. Ego comes ego comes when your left hand see what your right hand give.
Yes, yes, the conscious, more conscious in the matter, when the ego comes. Ego comes in a wise person also. He becomes so wise, as you said. He becomes so wise that he thinks he's the wisest of all. When I used to become angry very soon, earlier, and I judged it in a way that I was angry because of the truth I see. I said the truth, but I was angry always. I said to other people that you don't know the truth, and then that is also an ego. Only I know the truth. Maybe they are coming to the truth. Give them a chance, give them a path, give them a level of understanding. They will come and see. But you have to be in peace to give them the message, and they will come to the level of understanding now and then, somewhere, somewhat, somehow, everywhere. Kind of that. Yes, ego comes in truthfulness also. If you say I am the truthfulest one, that is also an ego, because everyone is true in their way. So this is, and yes, you are right. Thank you, my dear Jalal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shwan.
It sounds like you're getting a handle on it, and you are changing your position when things, even though you may not be physically moving, you are changing your position when things become uncomfortable, even though you're still there. You're sort of moving into a different dimension, perhaps. Shweta?
Yes, 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 yes. What I want to say that when even the wisest king, I will tell a little story about the Emperor Akbar and his wazir, his minister Birbal, because he thought he was the wisest one. One day he thought that why I have a lot of time. I'm the wisest one. I am going to ask question, and he always chosen Birbal to do what he wanted to do. And Birbal knows his emperor is very, very wise. But then one day the emperor did, because of his ego, the wise man with an ego asked a question. Birbal, can you find 5 fools for me? Very, very foolish person, if you see. Oh, Birbal said, my emperor, you want me to do this? To find 5 fools for you in 24 hours, he said. The emperor said, you have to find it in 24 hours. Okay, Birbal said, I'm at your service, my emperor. I will find them. I will come with them in 24 hours. And then the emperor was so happy. So see how wise I am and how good is my serviceman. And such, in that time, he forgot that the wisdom was within him. He shouldn't have asked Birbal for that. But then, because of fun, he became egoistic and said Birbal to go. And then Birbal gone and find a man sitting on a donkey, and on the head of the man, there's a bunch of grass, big bunch of grass on his head. And Birbal asked the man, why don't you put the grass on the back of the donkey? The man said, oh, my donkey will be overloaded. How can I do that? I love my donkey. Even the donkey is bearing the same thing, whatever this foolish man was doing. But he's in his way, he's right. Then Birbal said, oh, please come. I will have some money. I will have some gift for you from the emperor. And the man walks with Birbal. Then he met two person fighting each other. What they are fighting? One says that I will kill your cow, and with my tiger. Oh, you are killing my cow with my tiger. I'll kill you then. They were fighting like that. And Birbal said there was nobody. There was no cow. There was no tiger. And they were fighting. Then Birbal asked them, why you are fighting? The two men say, one man said, when I will pray to God and God give me I will ask him to give me a tiger. And the second man said, I will ask him to give me a cow. And the angriest person said, and my tiger will eat the cow. So they were fighting. How can you do that? Then these two people was taken away by Birbal to handle them gift from the Samrat, the emperor. And the third person he found was a person looking in a lamp near a palace, something. He was searching something in the grass. Birbal asked the person, what are you searching? The man was saying, I lost my ring. Then Birbal said, where you lost your ring? Can I help you? Oh, actually, I have lost my ring under that tree. And he showed a tree with darkness around it. But why you are finding here? Because here is light. So I'm finding it here. So that the man made this comment, and Birbal understand that he may need a gift. So he taken him to the emperor. And then he collected them and came into the darbar, the ministerial, towards the in the arena of the emperor, who was sitting and waiting for Birbal to come with the fools. And then he came with the three people and the donkey and said to the emperor that, my emperor, in your wisdom, I served you. These are the three fools. So the emperor asked, then what about the other two? Oh, my emperor, my lovely emperor, the fourth fool is me. As you have ordered, I have gone to found the fools. That is me. Oh, my dear. Then the emperor said, oh, my dear, I understand what you're going to say next. I understand. The Birbal said, yes, you are the fifth fool. You asked me to search for the fool. This is so easy. So that is the wisdom of an emperor gone wild in the egoistic man, that he can do anything because he's the wisest of all. So then he became fooled by himself, that he was so fooled, even questioning, even giving this service to Birbal. So this is the way we see ego in a way. A truthful man, very truthful, and then he become egoistic. I have seen this in my family. My grandfather, he was a very controllable man and very truthful man indeed. I have seen the honest person, but he was an egoistic person. Because of his ego, everybody is feeling suppressed by his way of behaving, of conduct. So this is what things happen when ego comes in a lovely people, in a truthful people, in a corrupt people, and then waste of everything. So this is what I want to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
So Birbal didn't lose his head over this?
Yes.
I
Lost.
These stories are very nice. I hope you keep sharing them with us.
Yes. Yes, he lost his mind first when the emperor asked him. He says that he's so wise, but why he's doing this again and again? Because he see the power in this, like that. Yes, because Birbal has found the three, but he knows what the two fools are. So that is, Birbal always knows that. So this is what. Yes, of course.
That was very nice. I think it's your mic. Your mic is a little scratchy.
Oh, okay.
Where you said yeah, just mute it. Okay. I thought that was very good. You said the man lost his gold ring under the tree, and Birbal asked him, why are you searching over here? He says, because there's light over here in this area. So yeah, very good, Shweta. Thank you for sharing.